So tell me about this ghost. Can you tell me about this ghost?
Oh yeah. So so I bought this house when I was in college, moved in, and then I was hanging out there one day with a buddy, and like my kitchen is attached, like there's a doorway that goes into, like I have my living room, but there's a doorway that goes into the kitchen, and then there's a hallway that goes down to the rooms.
Mm-hmm.
And we were sitting there and he saw somebody walk by. We were like, huh? And so went and looked and nobody was there. Sat back down, saw him walk back by, and he just left. And I was like, awesome. So then later on, same, like everything's kind of coming from this room that's right across from our room. Like we have like our master bedroom, and then across the hall is like this other room, and that's the ghost room. And one day, so I had a roommate that was living in there, and one day he like got up to like leave, get out of his room, and the door pulled shut, and like he like couldn't open it. He thought it was me messing with him. So he like hides in this closet and like sits in there for like 5 minutes waiting for me to come in so he could try and scare me. And then never came in. And then he went back and opened the door right up, and then nobody was home. And so he told me about that. And then we had a friend staying over in that room, and he woke up in the morning and looked up, like he had glasses because he had terrible eyesight. He like looked up and he thought it was our roommate standing there, and he was like, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? And then he like reaches over, puts on his glasses, and the person's gone. And so that's another experience. And then when we moved back, I didn't tell my wife about all these stories either, like before moving back in. And so like everybody has described this guy as like kind of like middle-aged, brown hair, kind of bowl cut almost, like guy that they keep seeing. And so we moved back in, and she told me, she was like, yeah, I had this weird dream that like I woke up and went into the room across the hall, and there was this guy that like I thought it was you for a second, but then he just had like this weird like his hair was different. And I was like, was it brown hair? She was like, yeah. I was like, was it a middle-aged guy? She was like, yeah. She was like, how did you know? I was like, that's the ghost. And she was like, no way. I was like, yeah, that's the one that everybody describes. And he's been pretty chill ever since. Like I've never really had a problem with him, but everybody else sees him.
I'm fascinated.
Yeah.
Ghost is one of those things that I definitely don't believe in by persuasion, but I choose to entertain because it just makes life more flavorful. I feel like it's like, it's so fun to imagine that maybe there's ghosts out there.
Yeah. Well, I'm like very superstitious. My mom was like very, very superstitious growing up, so I became very superstitious. And like Ouija boards, no way. You're like, you can't do a Ouija board. One time in college, one of my roommates wanted to figure out who this person was, so they brought a Ouija board in, and I said, no, we're not doing a Ouija board. And then I came home one night and they were doing it, and so I took it, threw it outside, and then I went in and got salt and did a circle of salt all around my house. Like,
really?
Just ran around. Everybody's like, you're crazy. I was like, I'm crazy about not having angry. Like, if I can make something upset and it's going to mess up my whole life, I'm not going to try to do that.
Yeah.
So, like, I'm very cautious on the paranormal side.
That is really interesting. Like, so when you say superstitious, what does that mean to you, I guess? Like, does that mean that you believe certain things or that you're concerned with certain things?
I guess it would be a healthy fear, you know? It's like, it's a respect more.
Of the paranormal in particular?
A respect of the paranormal, you know? It's like I've had experiences with things, and it's just like, like when I was a kid, my grandparents live in Mississippi, like out in it's like, I don't know how many acres, but it's a pretty big plot of land, and there's like old houses that are kind of broken down out there, and they would always say it's the ghost house. And like one time I went out and I got a book from it, and I brought it back, and then the next morning it was gone and it was back where it was. And I was like, okay, that's kind of weird, because nobody in the family, like I asked everybody, I was like, who put this back? And everybody was like, nobody. And I have it now. Like I took it. Nobody's taken it back yet. But just weird little thing. Like I've just always been fascinated with the paranormal too.
Yeah.
Like Zach Baggins, Ghost Adventures, gets me every time.
I don't think I know what that is.
You've never watched Ghost Adventures?
I don't think
on
so.
the Travel Channel?
Is that the? I remember around the time that. No, I don't think it was the same show. Around the same time that like Pawn Stars and all that shit was kicking off, and American Pickers. I remember there was a ghost show then that was kind of popular, but I don't know if that was what it was.
That's definitely Ghost. Well, it's either Taps or it's Ghost Adventures.
Okay.
Ghost Adventures I love because it's like a bunch of bros, like just like bro, did you hear that? And then like the host of it is like super aggressive towards the spirits. He's like very big on like taunting them to do something. He's like, come on, show me here. If you're real, come on, take me. And then he's just like goes to these, just like, I feel real crazy right now. Y'all just give me a second. It's like all right. I don't believe half of this, but I respect it. That's the healthy respect. It's like this may be all for show, but I respect it.
Yeah.
Like just exorcisms and stuff like that. It's like I don't want to be part of that. I don't want to have anything like that bad juju on me.
Man, yeah. There's like, I don't know what to do with it. There's like such a long, not only is there such a long history of people making claims of this sort, there's also so many so many claimed eyewitness accounts of things of this sort, and then there's like you could interpret that. I mean, you can interpret that a lot of different ways. Just like there's people can claim to see all sorts of things, but then there's people who try to perform exorcisms, and like the evidence from those, like the audio recordings from exorcisms and shit. That's just like it's just all I can say without being a persuaded believer of any of these things is that like at least all of these pieces together feels interesting and like somewhat compelling in some kind of way. I'm like very skeptical. I was like a hardcore atheist for a long time. That was just like rationality only, and everything is only physical in the brain. That's the only things that matter.
Yeah.
And so there's that part of me still that like laughs off anything that sounds old fashioned or far fetched or superstitious or whatever. But like, there's this other part of me that's very silent sometimes. It's like, it could be for a good reason.
Yeah. I got, what was it that really, Dan Brown. So like, I love Dan Brown's books, but he has one called The Lost Symbol. And they just made it a TV show, as well. But I read that book and it changed my life, like put me on a different path, I feel like.
Really?
But I mean, I was always really into kind of like tarot cards and fortune tellers and stuff like that. But I'd never learned about, like, I'd never heard of metaphysics. It's like metaphysical sciences and everything. And that book got me kind of like on this track of like learning more and more about that. And then like Mason, like the like Freemasons, and then like all the esoteric stuff connected with that. Like I'm really big into esoteric stuff, like because there's been different thoughts about what the brain is and consciousness is for thousands of years. It's like, and I feel like in today's day and age, like it's very straightforward. It's like there's science that is like, this is why you're happy, this is why you're sad. But back in the day, they're like, oh, it's because you have too much of a bile inside of you. You need to go ahead and get some leeches to suck out this blood and drink this tincture. It's like the sciences of like the mind that have developed over the just millennia. It's like back in the day they were like, oh no, it's a ghost haunting your brain. It's like there's all kinds of different things like that.
Yeah.
But then getting further into like the esoteric and metaphysical world, it's like more about developing yourself. It's like
when I what I understand about esoteric is understood by few. Is that the same definition that you're using?
Esoteric is, yeah. I'm talking more like there's I'm trying to think, like the Golden Dawn, like through the ages there's been like magicians, you know. It's like not your Magic, it's the Magick, you know. It's like the Aleister Crowleys and all that kind of stuff.
Okay.
but but not going straight into that. I'm more into the like alchemy side. Like,
Okay.
so like alchemy, everybody thought it was like, when you hear alchemy, do you think turning lead into gold, right? But really, underneath all of that, it's like the philosophy of like turning your soul is lead. That's the base metal you're working with, and you're trying to turn your soul into gold to like purify yourself, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like just listening. I listen to a lot of audiobooks when I'm welding, and it's just like listening to that kind of stuff, just trying to like it's all about enhancing yourself, like getting to the purest, most like the truest self you can be. And I feel like that's something growing older has been very big, because like I had a really bad alcohol addiction and then stopped, and then like just this growing period of like learning my relationship with vices, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And because like my music's always been like, that was what I was just, it was like a diary of like my problems, you
Yeah.
know, for a long time. And then I started changing into this new narrative about like I got really into the esoteric stuff, and it was more about like looking inside, like shadow work, like doing all this stuff where it's trying to make yourself a better person, but not just for yourself, but being a better like receptor for life, you
Mm-hmm.
know. It's like, because you can write about relationships all day long, but building them and writing about building relationships or like building friendships, you know, it's like I like that aspect of humanity, instead of just like, oh well, she broke my heart and she
Mm-hmm.
took my car, dang it, you know. It's like I would much rather just like the new record we're putting out, it's a lot of it's like learning. It's called Fool's Journey. And so if you go into like tarot cards, the first 22 of the tarot cards are what's called the Fool's Journey, or some other people like it's also known as the Hero's Journey. Like
Mm-hmm.
you'll hear in like film and like TV and life, you know, the hero's journey, you go through and you meet all these different characters. So like if you're looking through the tarot card, that's like the progression of people that you meet until you get to the end and start all over again. You know, it's like this cycle that you go through. And a lot of these songs are kind of like learning periods of like encountering different manifestations of life, you know. But that's just a very complicated way of being like learning my like growing pains, you know.